This is the People Class Podcast, the official podcast of the People Class. Show your support at patreon.com/thepeopleclass. Send us a shout out at the People Class on Twitter, and send us your feedback at thepeopleclass@gmail.com. Class is in session. Sticking with us this long. This is now our second half of the quad. Once again, our resident political analyst Brian Newton is joining us today, as well as Gabrielle Warren, aka Warren G, from the Who Are We movement organization. Today we are discussing America selling out and Congress taking the day off, right? we're in the midst of a crisis, and the government's actually allowing it to happen. There's a reason for this. That's what we're talking about today. Okay, so I want to present to you here. This is, and I just Googled this. A list of foreign auto manufacturers with plants in the U.S. This list was compiled by a Mr. Brian Tynes in November of 2017. cnhi.com. All right, just really quick, I just want to quote an intro here. So while on his trip to Asia, President Donald Trump requested Japanese automakers do something they were already doing: manufacture cars in the United States. Millions of vehicles made by foreign companies are produced in the United States. Okay, and here's a list of foreign manufacturers with plants in the United States and the vehicles they produce, end quote. Okay, so we're going to start this list now, all right? Just bear with me. And once again, this topic doesn't necessarily exclusively pertain to foreign auto manufacturers, right? There's all sorts of other producers here in America, including Silicon Valley, the tech industry, that our work is being outsourced, right? Like, once again, people, there's not going to be a bailout this time. We are nothing but human capital stock, cattle, chattel, property, human resources, whatever you want to call it now. This is a global shift. We want to fight the fight here in America, but this is a global shift. And this is something that apparently the powers that be didn't plan on happening so fast, right? So here we go. Toyota, Japanese. Georgetown, Kentucky. Camry, Avalon, Lexus. San Antonio. Tacoma and Tundra. Blue Springs, Missouri. Corolla, Princeton, Indiana. I think that's Indiana, right? Sienna, Highlander, Sequoia. Japanese company Nissan, they are in Canton. It's like, is that Missouri? I'm sorry, I don't remember these off the top of my head. MS.
That's Mississippi.
Mississippi. Okay, I'm sorry. Blue Spring. Canton, Mississippi. The Altima, Titan, Forester, Murano, NV. Not sure what that is. Smyrna, Tennessee, Altima, Maxima, Rogue, Leaf, Pathfinder, Infinity, QX60, Japanese, Honda, Greensburg, IN. What is IN again? I'm sorry, guys. I'm not so well versed in these.
IN, probably yeah. Indiana, right?
Indiana, I believe, right? Yeah. Okay, Greensburg, Indiana, East Liberty, Ohio, Marysville, Ohio, Lincoln, Alabama, Subaru, Japanese, Lafayette, Indiana, Chattanooga, Tennessee, German, Volkswagen, Greer, South Carolina, BMW, German, Daimler, German, Vance, Alabama, Latson, South Carolina, Hyundai, South Korean, Montgomery, Alabama, Kia, South Korean, West Point, Georgia, Fiat Chrysler, Italian, Belvedere, Illinois, Detroit, Michigan, Toledo, Ohio, and Warren, Michigan. And this was a list. This is a couple of years old now, but I'm sure that that list is growing, and the number of plants for each of those manufacturers are growing too. And I apologize, people, for my ignorance on abbreviations for states right now. COVID has a very fatiguing effect on your brain. I don't have COVID, but everything going on right now, man, it's just a tornado of information. So yeah, are you surprised by any of this? Do any of these states surprise you? Any of
I
them?
mean, you notice like a lot of most of the states were located in the South, but not many of them were located in like large economic centers like California and New York.
This is true. Yeah. Once again, is those abandoned sectors, right? The Democrat state, the blue states, as they call them, and that's blacks and lower class whites, right? So like,
Mhm.
um, once again, this is a class struggle we're in, and I was questioning for a while, like, so what's the gig economy gonna look like now? Because we got the gig economy out of the 2008 crash, and I couldn't really
Well,
kind of visualize the evolution of that. And now I see why. Like when you look at
what?
this, go ahead.
Sorry, one positive aspect of just really quick good news is that California is actually trying to make gig employee workers into full-time. They actually passed something about that very recently. So,
Yeah, I've seen something about that. Like people are trying to make efforts, like um, I think it was Richard Wolff who was sort of shaming them, saying that if those gig economy businesses, if they need to, just really screw over their workers that much to make a profit to survive, then maybe they shouldn't exist, right? That means that if they were to do the right thing and provide the needs that the employment should for their workers, their business model isn't good enough to survive under capitalism, basically.
right. Right.
So
It's basically rigging a game where again they're like slavery. You can be very profitable under a system of slavery if you're the slave owner.
oh yeah, sure. So yeah, and this stuff really this stuff we need to fight against here, man. Orange G, you had some thoughts.
So with the gig workers and so many other workers, apparently even like FedEx and even smaller companies, hiring independent contractors. This is like a big thing now that I mean, it's been a big thing, I should say, but now that the gig economy has exploded under that kind of employment, all these other companies are trying to utilize that same system. And what they do is they push off liability, they push off costs, they push off anything that they would potentially have to own onto the worker. And then that worker is responsible for tracking all their costs, doing their own taxes, making sure that all of their stuff is in line. And then the organization that pretty much hires them, even though they're
Excuse me.
contracted, they don't have any responsibility over that kind of stuff. And so then even with companies that produce something, create something, manufacture, and these guys doing the gig work and offering those kinds of services, it always comes back to taxes, shipping, and co- overall costs, including labor. So when you do all of those the equations that surround those things, you eventually find the big picture and why they are trying to do what they're trying to do. And the one thing that'll put a kink in that machine or a wrench right into the engine of it is an organized labor movement of any kind.
Yeah, absolutely. Um,
Yeah, and that's why having them be at least in California, having them become full-time employees, or at least classified under full-time employees, is so important because then under certain laws and regulations, they have to receive benefits that full-time employees also get, which means like some sort of a retirement pension or and even like healthcare benefits, which they were not afforded before because as Gabe mentioned, that they are contract employees, which I've worked freelance for like a year for one job, and that was at the 1080, I think.
1099, no?
1099. Yeah, I always get that confused. Yeah, the 1099 is a fucking problem
It is. I've
when
dealt
you're
with
doing
those.
your taxes. Yeah.
No, it is. And it's that way on purpose, right?
Yeah.
This is, excuse me. Once again, this is why, and to piggyback on Warren G's point here, excuse me, I didn't bring any water with me. To piggyback on Gabe's point, once again, this leaves us vulnerable, right? Now, people are going to be scrambling for jobs, but right now, people are focused on survival. So it's going to be really hard now when jobs do start to come back to negotiate and demand and be in a position to demand decent wages, right? You're going to take what you can get now. And it weakens us. It weakens us,
Well,
right?
through the deprivation, they're going to find people who are desperate, and
Oh,
that's
obviously. That's why we have scabs.
right. They're gonna eventually, cut off all the government assistance, and um, it's just gonna, it's gonna be bread lines again or whatever. But instead of bread, it's gonna be, oh, please give me that minimum wage job, and people are so inherently attached to this system that we have that they won't choose to fight over just trying to feed their families.
Yeah,
They're afraid, they're so scared to do that, and I think it has to be a full rejection of the system in order to get away from that kind of allowance of the deprivation in the first place. And that's like the overall conversation that you're trying to have here is the increasing amount of that's happening during this time. So
yeah. Like, when do we stop subscribing to our own oppression, right? Like, too
Well,
many
one
people. Go ahead.
No, yeah, one benefit, the fact that times are getting so desperate is the fact that even people who used to have a certain standard of living are being forced more onto like accepting minimum wage work, and even people went through like the education system in this country who are obviously educated to expect a certain standard. They, it's like it's fueling the revolution in a way where it's like, well, if I was just comfortable living a middle class or like even working class living, and now
Mhm.
I'm being forced under the poverty line, even though I did everything right, quote unquote right, and working within the rules of the system, those people were becoming further agitated and further radicalized. Now, some
Yeah,
people, like obviously the people who supported Trump, were radicalized to blame most of their problems on, brown people and Mexican people and, Obama, who has a lot of problems, but they don't have the same critiques we do of President Obama. But other people, like you see in the Black Lives Matter organizing and movement, have a better, and even Occupy Wall Street, they've developed a better structural critique about the systems of power that have led to our economic ruin and inequality in this country. And we're starting to develop a better class sense of it, about how corporations are like taking all our resources and leaving the American people with basically nothing.
and I think it's important too to highlight that this is an encore performance, right? Because a lot of people back in 2008 saw that same situation play out. CEOs had to start working at McDonald's and moving in with their parents, and presidents of companies and startups and executives um, basically had to go back to living the lives the same quality as a high school student,
Yeah,
right?
and that also helped fuel the increased popularity behind the Fight for 15 movement. because the argument they were using prior to and even during was like, well, they're just high schoolers and they don't need to have a livable wage. I was like, wait a minute. Most of these people are not in high school. They're not, this isn't like a temporary job. This is like their main wage. And you got
Oh my God.
adults. Yeah, adults living through their lives, they should be paid a living wage. They can't afford to live in most of the cities, not just like major metropolitans, but even like smaller metropolitans. They can't afford to live there under a $15 minimum wage. And and of course, we all know this, if wages kept up with inflation, the wage should actually be $21.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, and let's cruise here for just a minute. First of all, yeah, I mean, the teenagers should be making the wages if they're doing the work. I will say that. But yeah, I'm seeing this, excuse me, I'm seeing, and it's really sad. It's really sad. I'm seeing whole shifts at like fast food places like Burger King's being run by senior citizens. I'm seeing more and more of my contactless deliveries being senior citizens. And these guys should be enjoying their lives now. Like, once again, why are they 68 years old and up and whatever? Why are they? Why do they have to subscribe to accepting like teenage jobs, teenage level jobs?
Well, the myth behind America, most people they would justify that as like, well, they didn't work hard enough, so they get what they earned. And I'm like, but that is not the reality for most people. Like I said earlier, there are people who went through the system, did all like they went through higher learning, higher education, or just like they applied themselves, or maybe they tried something, and we don't provide anything to help most Americans receive a leg up
You know
in
what?
any capacity.
We're always talking about personal accountability. Always talking about personal accountability, and that being the reason for your lot in life here in America. But when do we hold the government responsible and accountable for when they do things like order businesses to close during this pandemic with no plans to support those people, and knowing that those businesses don't have a chance of opening up again because the government closed them down? Where's the accountability in that? Where was the accountability that the boomer had when they maybe spent their lives working their ways into like the upper hierarchy of whatever their career choice was, and then the 2008 crash came because of people gambling on subprime loans, right? They went to work every day, they did their job, they had no hand in those subprime loans, hopefully, and they still lost everything. So I mean, at some point, that personal accountability
But the
argument
but
has to
that
break down, man.
well, that propaganda is like was already beaten into these people's heads for so long that they can't, like, they're literally, that's why we're going through, honestly, a lot of this is culture shock for a lot of Americans. And you react one way or you react another way. And some people react with well, it's all these like lazy millennials' fault.
Hmm.
These overeducated college kids, these lazy working class like blacks and browns who aren't following the rules. It's all their fault why the country is the way it is. When it's like, no, this country is operating the way it's supposed to work. It's the wealthy people who also founded this country who maintain their power structure, and the rest of
Yeah.
us just have to eat bricks.
I think
And yeah. And
that's
anything we've gotten within this country has been through struggle and has been through adversity.
and on the flip side, inheritance. And I think it's so funny you brought that up. My first soapbox lecture was about that whole generation war and how especially now is being played out in the American mainstream media, and it's such a distraction, right? Like you can't open up your mobile device without seeing some sort of op-ed about millennials and avocado toast and financial irresponsibility and whatnot, right? um and it's important to know, like, once again, like, that whole generation war thing isn't new. It's just the American mainstream media has chosen to focus on that for the past decade or so, and Once again, it's a tactic to keep us separated, fractured, and pointing the fingers at one another. And it's the dumbest. Like, hey, humanity's still going, guys. And depending on how we move from here, you might see. But the younger generations have not ruined humanity or civilizations. A specific like group of people do that when we allow them to take over our power structures.
What's funny about that is that ideally, I mean, if you believe in like the nature of progress, as in it's a generational thing, that they people should recognize, and they most even boomers and older folks do that. Like, well, it's not perfect, but what we have is usually the canard that is thrown at us. And then when you advocate for things that would make it more perfect, even under like the promise of America, the whole more perfect union thing, is that when you advocate for things that would make it more perfect, that would cover more people, that would help more people, that would lead to less inequality, then you got to look at who are the forces and who are the people standing in the way of that. And that's when you really see the concept of those who want to maintain status quo and those who actually want to create change and positivity for.
Yeah, for sure. Let's look at it at a very there's low hanging fruit here. Let's talk about the institution of racism, and we're not gonna like dive into this too deep, but one question I've started challenging people with when they're defending whatever injustice happens to a black person is why are you so invested in this, right? Like you being born when you were and having all the entertainment and things to distract you and all the skills you could be learning and all the um, um, gifts and talents and maybe new discoveries you can be offering to the world. Why are you spending so much of your life dedicated to arguing against somebody asking not to be killed? Why are so many people dedicated to somebody telling you when you have to get up in the morning, what days you have to work, telling you no, you cannot take the day off even though you have a fever? You need to
Well,
come in.
as we talked about before on our discussions, that white supremacy has always been one of the ways of dividing people, specifically the working class, against each other.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, you even look at cops themselves. Cops have a union,
They do.
but like you often see them on the sidelines suppressing other union. I mean, if you want to take these laws into effect that says, hey, you can't unionize, well, who's going to enforce the fact that people are trying to unionize? It would have to be the police. So that
Exactly.
means police who have a union are going to have to be called out to stop other people from unionizing.
Mhm. And workers out there, what's stopping you from granting yourself such protection, right? Like once again, at what point has this become just people in power structures doing things, right? So, I mean, just like cops have, what is that called? The immunity.
Uh, I know what you're talking about. I
Yeah,
can't think of
yeah,
the term
yeah.
for it.
Gabe, the term escapes me right now. Um, but just like cops have that immunity, when we want to unionize in our workplaces, and the corporation or company does something wrongfully to you, retaliation of some sort. Why don't we have a network of just working class people in our communities? Some of them being lawyers who will fight just as dirty to protect you and give you the same immunity cops that are killing unarmed people are getting, right? And guarantee that you're not going to lose your job, right? And if you do, we're going to take care of you, right? Until you find something else. And we're going to also help position you, right? Into gainful employment. Like, why can't we do that ourselves? Why
Well,
can't we do that
I like what
ourselves?
well, I want to mention like what Gabe was talking about earlier about like the co-ops is the fact that if we have better structures about how we work in this country, and Richard Wolff, of course, talks about this all the time, it's just like if worker co-ops, then we would be obligated to look out for each other,
Oh,
because in
exactly.
the system of co-op, it's like what happens to one person who's your ally, who's your coworker, would directly affect you. You wouldn't let their rights get trampled, as opposed to your self rights are going to be trampled in the same way. But with the way we see it now, it's that like, well, I have to get it for myself. It's like we turn work. How am I looking to search this? So it's basically everything in our country is always competitive. It's
Yeah, I'm
like I have to
hearing
get the job so that other
rugged.
person doesn't get the job.
I'm
Yeah,
hearing
rugged
rugged individual.
individualism.
Yes.
Yeah, so I have to get the job to prevent the other person from getting the job, because if I don't get the job, I'll starve, and that person starves. Well, that's on them. As opposed to, hey, let me let us both try to get our to do our not do our best. Let's both advocate for each other to maintain employment, to maintain a job, because I don't want this other person starving on the street, because eventually that person's going to get so desperate that knife is coming towards my back, because if I have the stuff, he's coming for my stuff. So in order to eliminate even that contention, let's make sure that like every man and woman in the society is being able to provide for themselves, and fairly and equitably, uh, which means no wages being suppressed by corporations, by bad business practices like what the gig economy does. It means like having being able to live within the cities that you work under financially, and not being forced living in a tent under a bridge, even though you have full-time employment. It means
Hmm.
not having, there's so much disparity among capital with the CEOs and the oligarch class, that they can basically run our elections and dictate our democracy, that even if the popular majority of the people want a Medicare for all system, the lobbyists say, that's going to hurt my bottom line. So you know what, you can't have that. It's just ridiculous.
Well said, Brian.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, it's this strange place that we're in where, we even the term employment just kind of grosses me out. Even before the pandemic, before I started doing labor organizing of any kind, I was attempting in my own city to take care of an industry of people that I really cared about, and it was the coffee industry in St. Louis, and I tried desperately to get them together and talking and creating some sort of structure for themselves, to get healthcare because they didn't have it, unless they got it through the government, through Obamacare, or something along those lines. But they couldn't even afford that anyway, and it's not even good insurance. So things based around healthcare, things based around raising their wages, and it was completely rejected. And that's when the economy was doing really well, but people thought I was aiming for their jobs, and I was invading the businesses and stuff like that. And it was just this weird like sense of you don't even want this for yourselves. And
Right.
now that the pandemic has hit and we have this opening to go from that individualistic way of seeking employment and looking for our corporate masters to decide what our fate is. We are now seeing that they aren't going to take care of us, and it is up to us to start building those structures and within our communities and stop looking for them to give us the answers and the support. We need to actually create that for ourselves, and yeah, have more care for your neighbor and have more care for the people you're working alongside. And to end my slight rant here, the idea of creating things from raw materials and growing those raw materials and having control over the quality of products that your community and your country are have access to and consume and need necessities. We're talking like staples and clothing, boots, energy, warmth, anything like anything that is a necessary good. Uh, it just needs to be something that we actually have some sort of control over, and it should be ingrained within our culture. And it's just not. We constantly let everyone else and let, like, the corporate class and the oligarchs control the means of production, and we just give up on it and wait for it to come to us.
That's
You still there, Brian?
No,
Can you hear me?
oh, there
I
he
can
is.
hear you now. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I would just want to continue on Gabe's point is the fact that even Cenk Uygur on the Young Turks often talks about like how he doesn't want the government involved in like making shoes. And I'm like, why not? People need footwear. If there's a government, if like, and not only would that create employment, but like if there's a government shoe that's not like as high brand as like a Nike, which slave labor, but also like any other like Adidas or anywhere else. And just like, I just need something on my feet to get me through the day because I don't have a lot of capital to like waste time on like these high price shoes. So I just need point A to point B, give me the government shoe and I can go continue to my day. Why don't we just have like, what, you need furniture, but I don't want to go to IKEA and I need silverware, plateware, but I don't want to go to Pier 1 and get like gouged. I just need like a government plate so I can get through my day. I just need a government sofa so I can furnish my apartment. And then if I want to move up within the system of capital that we exist under, then I can go to Pier 1 or wherever and like participate more in like those higher echelons of capital if I so choose. It just makes no sense why we don't even have just a basic safety net that we provide for people. And unlike like you mentioned before, that would be a job and resource that people could do.
Because you know what, Brian, that is totally contrary to the ethos of the American institution, right? So we rather literally pay what's called armies of people, what's called the military. We pay masses of people to maintain planes, to maintain tanks, to maintain and create bombs and weapons of death, right? Right. I mean, what if we just repurpose those people who are maintaining weapons of death and just, have them do those things you're talking about? Let's have them build houses with the Army Corps of Engineers. Let's get infrastructure fixed with, those same types of groups. The Seabees, I think, in the Navy or something like that. I'm sorry, I don't remember all the rates and stuff like that. But they have the skill, they have the ability, they feed masses of people. I mean, the military basically runs off of a socialist program. Everybody in their ranks, if you don't have or can afford private housing, they put you in barracks and they feed you 3 times a day. And I've never paid a cent for any medication I needed. All my surgeries are free, including dental. I also believe that for women, you can also get sort of body adaptations for morale reasons, and that costs you absolutely nothing. So once again, we have these socialist systems, and we have the means to do this stuff. We just need to reallocate our people and our funds to doing that. So why aren't we doing that?
We need to fire them all, Aaron.
Fire them all. That's what I'm saying. At what point is it just people doing stuff and they're taking the day off and they keep taking the day off, especially on the hard days, right? When there's pandemics and people are losing homes and jobs are going under and they just can't take it. It's too stressful today. I need a vacation.
We need to take their popularity and the money that they do get paid, the representatives, the money that they do get paid. We need to take it all away from them. We need to take the positions away from them and just tell them that they are fired. And it even goes down to like local authority figures as well, representative authority figures, like my mayor currently. Her name's Lyda Cruson. She needs to go. She needs to go, and the people in Missouri State, they need to go. And it's not about voting them out anymore. It's simply stating what, sadly I have to quote the man, but Donald Trump, sitting across that boardroom table saying, "You're fired. You're done. We're done with you. And we're going to take whatever resources you've been allowed to control, and we're going to start utilizing that with a different system within our local communities or state communities or even the entire country, and just start using it with care and care for the people, the people that they're supposed to represent. I mean, hell, that's what the whole revolution was about. The American
And
Revolution was
and
about.
and, and federal
Experiencing
employees included. Fuck, this illegal for them. They're affected by this. They're citizens. They live off of substandard wages too. Why can't
I mean,
they?
look at what Trump's done with the postal service. How many people
Exactly.
lost their jobs over that fucking debacle?
Yeah, right. Like, and that's what he's doing is against the Constitution, but it's illegal for a federal worker to strike. Excuse me? Who says? This guy in the suit just doing some shit in the White House? Like, why don't we just all just stop clocking in, just don't go in one day, and we wait until they leave those fucking positions, walk the fuck out of Capitol Hill, get the fuck off the Senate floor, leave the White House. We're not doing anything. Fucking leave. Fucking leave. We'll do this until you leave. Once you leave, we'll start, running the country again. But fucking leave.
To me, it looks like the representatives in Congress are already doing their little version of a strike.
Fuck 'em.
We should be able to do our own.
Well, yo, once again, these are just people doing stuff. Why can't we just get like people walk in there and let's start setting up our own laws and stuff, right? And writing those in and saying, hey, you abandoned your post. You abandoned your post. You keep abandoning your post when the American people need you. So you know what? We're going to fill in. I'm sorry. You're not going to get another paycheck. The job abandonment. Goodbye.
There must be some clause or some rule somewhere that says, like, if the representatives are derelict of their duty, that the American people can just step in and do it for them.
Well,
or
I know
someone
under the private sector and with the help of the government's backing, I'm forced. We're forced, right? We're and it's so frustrating. We accept all this bullshit. They tell us we can't do what they're doing. God dang it. I'm tired of playing by different rules, B.
Yeah, I get that.
Thank you for tuning in to another session of the People Class Podcast, the official podcast of the People Class. I hope you found the information shared in today's session enlightening, or at the very least, raise some questions. I extend an invitation to join us for more weekly sessions. And remember, our work does not stop here. Get active, organize, and take control over your destiny as an American working class person. Class dismissed.